Very much appreciate your content, Armin. Awesome. I'm from the UK, and yeah, no worries. I'm from the UK, and so our the view we get fed on our mainstream media, such as the BBC and Channel 4, is very pro-Palestinian. It's very biased, and there's a general acceptance of the UN position, the position that's been fed by the Hamas propaganda, basically, that there's been a genocide and things like that. We very rarely hear anything, if at all, about Hamas's indoctrination of children using their state television, which I'd encourage the gentleman who opened this conversation to seek out online. There's quite a lot on YouTube about the terrible television programs that Hamas has produced to indoctrinate its children. So yeah, that also ties in with what someone else was saying about keeping an open mind. I think it's also closely tied in with the Iranian situation. I think it would be quite obvious to state that, because I think Hamas has received a lot of funding from the IRGC. Just thought I'd bring that in as a reminder. Personally, I don't believe that there's a two-state solution here, because, as Armin suggested, it involves a sort of nonsense argument that you accept the existence of a group of people who are defined by their belief that Israel doesn't deserve to exist. So there's a kind of an inherent destructive element being acknowledged there. So two would always become one if one state gets its way. So I think that's often brushed under the carpet, because there's a general ideology, and we all know where it comes from, this Islamist ideology that's the root of the problem. And I think, given that's existed for over 1,000 years, I think it's going to be quite wishful thinking to expect that to disappear anytime soon. And what I think is the solution to that is to use these tools that we've got now, these mass media tools, and to have great presenters like Armin, Goldie, and all the other friends who present this kind of critical content to continue doing what they're doing and be supported by the community in that. Just to round up, I would also recommend that the opening chap, or anybody else who's interested, look into Natasha Hausdorff. She's a UK international lawyer, and she's the head of, I think it's Israel Friends Lawyers or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. But she speaks very clearly and concisely about the legal position in international law about the existence of Israel, Palestine, and things like that. And I've learned a lot from her. Thank you.
Thanks, and welcome in, Chris. It's good to have you. Next to respond, we have Tarun.
Okay, so I don't even think that this should be much of an argument. I don't think Palestine as a country should even exist. They're not even a real country. Neither are they an ancient civilization that has actually existed with an ancient culture and ethnic identity, but they're not even an established modern nation for a specific purpose. Even the United States was formed so that it could be so it could be its own civilization founded upon, sorry, let me just I was distracted a little bit by the comments in the text. So it was founded for classical liberalism and for independence from the British, so they could live with their own freedoms. But Palestine does not exist for any reason beyond just being another Muslim Arab state and for antagonism towards Israel. So I personally reject any purpose for the existence of the big three useless countries: Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Palestine. These three countries don't really serve any purpose beyond to be enemies with Israel and India. So I don't even know why Israel is trying to make peace with Palestine. Just why should they exist as a country? It's like whenever I look at my own country, India, and I wonder, why are they trying to make peace with Pakistan? Why are they trying to make like even Bangladesh I can understand, but Pakistan has no reason to exist except to be not even a Muslim country, just a country that wants to go against India. Beyond that, they don't have any other reason to exist. And Palestine is just Israel's Pakistan. That's my understanding. They exist to hate Israel and to try to kill the Jews. So they're not a country. Pakistan is not a real country. Palestine is not a real country. Even Bangladesh is not a real country. Why make peace with countries that should not even exist?
Okay, Pakistan and Bangladesh are real countries. Unfortunately, we can't just deny that. Pakistan is not. I think a better comparison to Palestine would be Kurdistan. That is not a country, that doesn't exist. That is delusional. But Pakistan is a real country, and Bangladesh is a real country. And I agree with you that they are problematic countries, especially Pakistan. Pakistan has been cursed by the three evils of Islam, poverty, and inbreeding. So it's like the most problematic country in the world, in my opinion. But it is a country, and we have to, and it's internationally recognized as a country, and we cannot deny that.
Okay, but my point is that the reason behind the three countries, Pakistan, Palestine, and Bangladesh, is antagonism towards India and Israel. And I don't even want to get into India and Pakistan right now. It's about Israel and Palestine. Palestine exists for antagonism towards Israel.
Yep.
Israel has no
Yeah, I agree with that.
reason
I agree
to
with that.
make peace. It's just the Pakistan for Israel, in
Yeah.
my opinion, that does not exist. That's the
No,
only
it's
difference.
it's not the Pakistan with Israel, because stop Palestine from becoming a thing, but Pakistan is done. It's a thing. You're not going to put that genie back in the bottle, right? The Pakistan is a thing. It will remain a thing, and we have to find a different solution for that problem, right? I wish Pakistan would remain part of India, but now here it is, and I don't think you could. I don't think you could merge them back together again. I don't think that's achievable. So you have to come up with a different solution. But Palestine is not a thing, and we should not let it become a thing. Pakistan is a thing, and we can't undo that. And we have to figure out a different solution. So that's a big difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
All right. But I agree with your views on Palestine. But yeah, let's continue.
Okay, finally, we have Jilly to respond.
Hi, guys. Yes, I just want to say 2 points about this. The first thing, the name, the West Bank, is a colonizing name. Indigenous people have indigenous names for a region. The Jewish indigenous names for the region are Judea and Hebron and Samaria. And the name West Bank only came in after 1948 when Jordan actually occupied the area and ethnically cleansed it of Jews. And they didn't have an indigenous name for the region, so they renamed it the West Bank after the West Bank of the Jordan. That's the first point. And the second point I want to make is that the whole issue about Judea and Samaria clarifies the actual goals of the Palestinian movement, because 20% of the population of Israel are not Jewish. They're mostly Arab, and yet Israel is the one that the West chooses to call an apartheid state, that anti-Israel people call an apartheid state. Yet the Palestinian Authority and the Gazans all make the same thing, that not one Jew should live in Judea and Samaria, and that such a thing of having a Jew in Judea and Samaria is to be an obstacle to peace. Not an obstacle to peace for Arabs to live in Israel, but it's an obstacle to peace for Jews, a single Jew, to live in any territory that may or may not be slated ever to become an Arab state. And I think that, to my mind, that clarifies what the issue really is, which is about domination and erasure of Jews, rather than about having any kind of an Arab state where people, it should be obvious to people in the West that's what it's about. And I don't understand why it isn't. Those are my points. That's all.
I think we need t-shirts that say we put the Jew in Judea, and maybe something will register to people. That's where that comes from. I like it. That's a free idea for any of you. Okay, back to the main list. We have Ali.
Sorry, I was muted. Hey guys, we have quite a bit of important news that I would like to share. So let's go with the biggest news, which is that there are rifts forming in the regime. So we have IRGC and Ghalibaf, which were probably more likely on the same side. So we saw them go to Islamabad and Pakistan to make the negotiations with the US, to meet with JD Vance and all that. And what we're hearing now from Iran International is saying that, so people who are familiar with the ongoing discussions, probably people in the regime, are saying that IRGC, which is the foreign minister, has acted over the past 2 weeks without informing Pezeshkian, in full coordination with Vahidi and based on his directives. So this is what I was saying for a while now, how Vahidi is IRGC's new boss. And this is not definitive or concrete evidence. I'm just saying that it's been very telling over the past couple of weeks how IRGC's been acting, because it's very different than he was acting before. So that's one thing. The other thing is you have a couple of big dogs at the top of the regime right now. So you have Jalili, you have Ghalibaf, you have a couple other people. And what's important about this is that they had a meeting in the parliament. And in this meeting, you had a bunch of people who were voting against Ghalibaf being the lead negotiator. And we heard that Ghalibaf stepped out of that role, or pushed out of that role. The guy who was behind this made a very interesting statement. So this guy, Jalili, who's Armin's been talking about, is becoming a bigger name. This guy called upon Mujtaba Khamenei to clarify publicly whether ongoing actions reflected his directives. He's saying, is Khamenei even still there? Is he acting? Is he telling people what to do? Show us proof. And he said, in a post that is now deleted, if Khamenei does not show such evidence publicly, that there will be sedition of officials. So officials, him, other people, might turn against Khamenei or other people, which he deleted this. And so that was aimed at Ghalibaf, and they have essentially pushed him aside. So these are the biggest rifts that have just formed, or have actually been forming. This is just the news that's been coming out. We've been talking about this for a while. And lastly, I don't know if anyone knew, but Hegseth, which is the Secretary of War, got put into the hot seat in front of the Senate. And him and Admiral Brad Cooper had to go and answer a bunch of questions from senators who, and this is what the US senators have been feeling, okay? So they're about to vote on something really important that I'm about to mention, and they feel like they have no info. They're like, I don't know how long this war is going to go on. I don't know if I support this. Is it good for my political career? Is it not? They don't know. So they called upon Hegseth and Brad Cooper to come and answer a bunch of questions. One of which questions was Hegseth answered, the 60-day clock pauses or stops in a ceasefire. The senators refuted that. They're saying that is not the case. The reason why Hegseth said this, though, and why it's important, is that it seems like he is going to make a case about this, and it seems like there are some grounds about it. Whether this is the case or not, this Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, the United States Senate is going to vote on this, and the Congress, the House, is also going to vote on this to see if there's going to be an extension for this war. And I believe I forgot exactly how much it was, but it's enough days for this war to end. And so that's going to be a really important timeline coming up. So this Friday. And I'm moving on to a little bit less important news. Scott Bessent, which is the Treasury Secretary of the United States, released this today. And he showed that the rial, since the beginning of the operations, has plummeted to the most invaluable it's ever been. And so a fun fact for any of you, since the Shah, so since 1979, the Iranian rial has lost 97, almost 98% of its value. So let's just, for people who like to argue about the Shah's time versus now, you can just take that one statistic and just go with it. And it's hard to argue with that. And Armin, if you want these, I can share them.
Yes, I was going to ask you.
That post prompted Ghalibaf, or rather the person who's making these posts for Ghalibaf in California, prompted him to make this incredibly stupid post, which said that, all right, you guys blockaded the Strait of Hormuz, you guys blockaded the entire ocean pretty much, not just the Strait of Hormuz. And look at it. If you drew a wall from the east to the west coast of the United States, Iran's total borders are still greater. So this guy doesn't even know basic math. because the total borders of Iran go like this, right? And this guy's comparing two flat lines with I don't know. I don't know.
What the hell?
This guy is too stupid. And lastly, this one's just like an insignificant piece of information, but today a fire broke out on the USS Higgins, which is a destroyer. And it was apparently a major fire that left the destroyer stuck for a couple hours there before it did get some help. But that's just an internal fire. Maybe it's another dryer. I don't know.
Which group is that belong to?
I'm not sure. Let me stop sharing. But yeah, that's some interesting stuff. So Friday's the big day.
By the way, Ali, thank you so much for that. You always come with the best information that we need to pay attention to. So I appreciate that a lot. One thing regarding Jalili that I would want to add to that before we go to Jeffrey and other people who want to respond is that with Jalili, let me actually bring out the bingo card so people know who we're talking about. Here. Jalili is a member of the Supreme Security Council, but he's also the person that some people suggested that maybe if Ghalibaf is pushed aside, he's going to be leading the negotiations. The problem that Jalili has, so also I need to remind everybody that Jalili is also part of the Paydari camp, which means that he's more Islamic revolutionary minded than even the Khamenei camp, right? He's more Durka than the Khamenei camp. Everybody from the Paydari camp is way more Islamic and revolutionary, Islamic Republic revolutionary minded than Khamenei, right? So Khamenei is the second runner-up. These people and everybody associated with these people. The Paydari camp is the type of people who don't like the Islamic Republic because it has the word republic in it. The fact that they even have fake elections is something that they don't like. But so Saeed Jalili is part of those people. And actually their spiritual leader, some people argue, is not even Khamenei. The spiritual leader is Mir Bagheri, which is something that we could discuss later. But Saeed Jalili, his weakness is that he has no military backing, right? So Ghalibaf has some power within IRGC. Jalili has basically close to nothing, right? So when it comes to military force, he has close to zero power. But here's the interesting part. This is something that I was going to make a video about. His power comes from the regime supporters, right? Because the people, the 5% or less than 5% regime supporters, the people within the Paydari camp, because that's what they want, right? So we have the vast majority of the Iranian people, let's say 95%, who are anti-regime. They're more secular minded. The pro-regime Iranians, sometimes they are against the officials because they're not strong enough when it comes to enforcing hijab or responding to Israel or responding to the United States. That's why the Paydari camp are the people within the Paydari camp. They support them more than the other people within the Islamic Republic. Like one member of parliament, which is Sabati, is somebody that they love a lot, right? So the street protests that you have seen in Iran by the pro-regime people has now given the Paydari camp and people like Jalili some influence, some more influence. So the Islamic Republic decided to bring the pro-regime Iranians into the streets every single night for the past 2 months as a way to stop an uprising within Iran. And that has actually been successful. Like that was a smart thing to do, given that they thought that they don't have enough suppressing ability. That was a really smart way to try to discourage the anti-regime Iranian people to come and do an uprising. But one way it has backfired is that it has turned into its own army by the Paydari camp, right? So people like Jalili are now weaponizing these street protests as a way to increase their influence, right? So the people, the pro-regime people, are now an army that wants to pressure the Islamic Republic to be less flexible to the Americans and go full aggression mode, right? And they're basically listening to the people like Jalili or Sabati or Nabavian, for example, somebody that I keep talking about here as well. or Rasai, for example. And Jalili is the main person within the Paydari camp, like the most important. He's not the head of the Paydari camp, but he's the most important person. So if you have Jalili versus IRGC, Jalili's influence on IRGC is by setting the narrative within the streets right now by the pro-regime Iranians to shout their demands and basically making it clear that the pro-regime Iranians, who are now the reason for the Islamic Republic continuing to live, as the regime admits itself, is that their demands are becoming more and more less and less flexible, and they ask for so much, and the IRGC needs to decide whether or not they are going to give in to the demands of the pro-regime people or not. And the people who influence these people's maximum level of expectations are people like Jalili, right? And you could see by everything by that Ali wrote what these people want, right? And what these people's agendas are. So Mushtaba, the way you need to think about Mujtaba is who gets to speak on behalf of Mujtaba. Okay, because Mujtaba is like a, I don't know, Schrodinger's supreme leader. We don't know if he's talking, he's not talking, is he dead or alive? Is he like, when he says something, honestly, even if he was alive and healthy, I would assume he knows that he has no power for himself anymore, and he needs to see who's actually in power and basically speak on, basically put out the message that they approve, right? So you can see his messaging is changing as well, which shows that whoever had control over what Mujtaba says or whatever you say on behalf of Mujtaba, it has changed, because originally it seemed like the Ghalibaf camp had the upper hand, because he was saying he approves the negotiations and he approves of he endorses Ghalibaf. So it seemed like the Ghalibaf people had control over what Mujtaba says. And now Mujtaba is being controlled by, I think, based on the things that he's saying now, by people like Vahidi, right? So we have Ghalibaf, we have Vahidi, and we have Jalili. And Vahidi is like, when it comes to radicalism, is less than Jalili, but more than Ghalibaf, right? So the power and the way, the direction of everything is moving away from what Ghalibaf wants and more closer to what Vahidi wants. And you could see, based on the statements that are coming from Mujtaba, that the Vahidi camp now has the upper hand, but the Jalili camp is now trying to come in and gain their influence using the people in the streets, right? Using the army, the civilian army of the Islamic Republic. And we'll see how much influence that they have. And the message that Ali read, when Jalili was challenging whether or not these messages that are coming out are from Mujtaba at all, show us the supreme leader, like, how do we know that these statements are from Mujtaba? Is because he is not in a position to use that leverage. Ghalibaf had that leverage to say Mujtaba endorsed me. Vahidi had that leverage to say Mujtaba is now saying this, and he's probably using the people close to the circle, close to the Beit Rahbari, the office of supreme leadership. He's controlling them, and he's using them to put out those statements. But Jalili doesn't get to do that. So it makes sense for Jalili to try to come disarm other parts of the Islamic Republic for being able to use this as a weapon. Does that make sense, what I'm saying regarding why Jalili is challenging that narrative? It's because
Yeah.
he doesn't get to use it. Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening. Jalili's trying to butt himself in and try and get more influence, which is great, because at this critical time, you're supposed to be united. And the fact that he's trying to further his own agenda, because this guy's been frustrated for decades. Like, why is it the Islamic Republic? Why do we have elections? We're not Islamic enough. You finally do it all now.
Why did we have internet? Like, why do we have internet connected to the whole world? He thinks that we even allowed the Iranians to connect to the world. That's a failure of the Islamic Republic.
Okay, on the response list, we now have Jeffrey.
Yeah, so you guys brought up the War Powers Act and how that it plays into the ability to sustain operations. And I know that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and the current argument is that ceasefires somehow pause the 60-day clock That's tragically not true. Section 5B states in no uncertain detail the president must, quote unquote, terminate the use of forces within 60 calendar days after the report or when it was required. That allows, now that doesn't mean it has to end, right? There's still another, what is it? A president gets a no questions asked unilateral extension of 30 days, which they can just apply. In the exact text from Section 5B, the same section says, such 60-day period shall be extended not for more than an additional 30 days if the president determines and certifies to Congress in writing that unavoidable military necessity respecting the safety of U.S. armed forces requires the continued use of such armed forces in the course of bringing about a prompt removal of such forces. Now, what does that kind of mean? I'm going to get to one of the other things non-interventionists, particularly leftists and or libertarian douche canoes, did when they fucking voted to repeal the AOMF in December of 2025. That removed that tool, but that we'll get to that in a minute. So what does this mean regarding the extension? So let's say they go, yay, we stopped President Trump, we're going to save the mullah. So then we just file for a unilateral extension for 30 days. And what a lot of the more aggressive elements within the administration and or their buddies are pushing for is a massive air campaign that will delete the rest of the fucking regime. What do I mean by that? Great, we have to pull our forces out. We got to make sure that our forces are safe. Great. We'll do a mass friggin' bombing campaign using all of our heavy aircraft, which means we can service 6,600 to about 9,700 targets in 15 minutes per wave. So every 5 days, we delete between 66 and 70 and 9,700 targets. And that's if we just load up with 500-pound brilliant guided munitions. What does that mean? It means in the first wave, we delete everything in the Strait of Hormuz, from speedboats to rowboats to a besieged douche canoe and an inflated duck. We kill everybody. You remember that little thing you put up with all the red X's? That will be all red X's. And every general, every colonel, every lieutenant colonel within the IRGC and besiege is dead. All of their tanks, artillery, rotoring aircraft. They go back, reload, takes 5 days for a round trip, so we can do these 6 times. They cost about $1 billion a pop. We come back, second time, we're like, yep, we've killed all the stuff that needs 500-pound bombs. We're just going to load up with 250-pound small diameter bombs, which now we can service twice the amount of targets. What does it ultimately mean if we really want to go hog wild and make sure that we just kill the regime and shit in our mouth? By the end of 30 days, we've serviced 66,000 targets, which means that the regime has been essentially deleted. Like every military asset is destroyed, every naval asset is destroyed, every hardened missile facility is destroyed, and every element of the besiege and or IRGC leadership down to the fucking sergeant level has been killed. And that's if we allocate a bomb per target, which probably not, because you're going to be co-located. That's, of course, now understand that means that presumes there's no intelligence bottleneck. And I want to add this to your Iranian listeners, right? Iranian civilians that were like frustrated. Why is Prince Reza Pahlavi not making the call? Because part and parcel of what feeds the intelligence is the assets on the ground, and His Highness Prince Reza Pahlavi, knowing that this would be a potential move, was very wise to conserve his fighting strength. If that goes, at the end of 30 days, you're almost to the point where you could just walk out and go, Iran is ours. That's barring unintended negative secondary consequences, assholes around the region flooding in. I mean, at the end of that, like every fucking besieged douche canoe, every foreign fighter, every asshole in their Barbie jihadi friggin' technical on a fucked up Durka Scooby-Doo mystery has been splattered all over the road. Like they're all done. Donald is not happy. Like he is seriously considering mass air strikes and campaign, which we have 30 days to do if we apply for that extension. And it would be very valid. Finally, I'll close with the AOMF and what left-wingers, never-Trumpers, Democrats, and stupid-ass libertarians did. So in response to us rightly using the AUMF to get rid of Maduro, because Maduro had organizational operational ties with the IRGC and fucking Hezbollah, who played a role in killing my fellow soldiers in Iraq and helping Al Qaeda in Iraq and all the rest of it, they voted to repeal the AUMF. And what that does is it hamstrung the executive branch to go after terrorists that were involved in or tied to those that were involved in the terrorist attack of September 11th and or our campaign to eliminate them. So again, what does that all mean? It means that everything that you do right here is very important, right? The battle of the narratives, political capita, the thing you keep hammering home, very important.
Thank you.
Okay, as a quick update from the side chat, Shadi is saying that Shin is reporting blasts in Tehran. I also received an update about 10 minutes ago now stating that air defenses have been activated in eastern Tehran and in the Nazi Abad area.
Let me quickly add to this. Last night there were also blasts and AA activity, but when I listened to an audio of the blasts, and they weren't like the intense hellfire that is supposed to happen, so it's really strange.
A lot of these are just air defense, the Islamic Republic air defense shooting at things. It's not like anything exploding on the ground. Sometimes it's just basically they hear drones or something and they start shooting into the air. That might be it.